Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of the WatchRolling.com podcast, a veteran-owned podcast that focuses on watch collecting with the goal of helping veterans. My name is Jason, and I'm your host. If you're new to the pod, welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. Last week, we discussed the VA's development of national standards for healthcare providers, and I introduced you to my pack of Super Sea Wolves. The introduction to the pack of Super Sea Wolves was a three-part watch review of the same model timepiece. The Zodiac watches Zulu Oscar 9209. I own one, my wife owns one, and a good friend T owns one. He's at Life Watching and Life Doing on Instagram. And we each did a review on the same timepiece that we all own, just from three different perspectives. I thought it was really good. And last week I just talked about it and gave you some background information into the methodology and the thought process behind it. I'll include the links again in the show notes, but they're also in last week's episode as well. Also, a friendly reminder that I'm now the co-host of a weekly Tuesday evening live stream with Sam from Casual Watch Reviews YouTube channel. We do it every Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this week we discussed some hits and misses as far as some new releases that came out. We always have a fun time on there. And I invite you to tune in every Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we also have a Sunday live stream at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That one's designed to incorporate more of an audience if we can get it. It's a Sunday social. We take a lot more questions from the audience. We have a whole bunch of audience interaction, and we do it a little bit earlier on Sundays so we can incorporate and involve some of our audience that's over across the pond on the other side of the Atlantic, so we can get some more interaction. And those are, I think they're all pretty laid back and funny, but the Sunday ones are just a little more free flowing. And I really like them. So I'll include those links in the show notes. Make sure you go check them out. Again, this week's episode is sponsored by Mushi Watch Straps. Mushi Watch Straps is a veteran-owned business that provides well-built and fairly priced NATO straps, two-piece straps, leather and canvas straps, as well as watch tools, accessories, and storage. Again, I go on and on about the fluted NATO. They're awesome. They have the gray fluted NATO. They have the operator, which is a tan fluted NATO. They have a black one. The watch rolls, the canvas watch rolls, they have the microfiber pockets inside and a simple leather strap. They get the job done. They're built well. And everything is fairly priced. So I invite you to go check out their website and make sure you use the code VET10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order. That's VET10 for 10% off your entire order. Victor Echo Tango 10. And I'll include the link to Mushi Watch Straps in the show notes. They can be found at www.mushiwatchstraps.com. So this week we're going to discuss, it's kind of a heavy topic, but I'm not going to go super in depth with it, but just a warning, it's going to involve suicide. We're going to discuss the new Veterans Crisis Line phone number. I've been including the crisis line number and a little blurb in the admin notes of each show. I want to discuss this because there's a new number, there's a new way to access it, and I want to cover those bases to everybody. And just a fair warning out there, because I know suicide is a difficult topic to cover for some people. So fair warning. And then I run across an unusual moment that made me question pretty much my whole entire watch collecting journey. So in veteran related news, the VA released, their own Veterans Crisis Line phone number. So before we had the previous number, which is still there, but effective July 16th, the veterans have the option to dial straight 988 and then press 1 to connect with some qualified responders for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week crisis support. So that would be just dialing 988, and then pressing 1. And there's been a whole bunch of stuff. There's been a recent National Suicide Hotline Designation Act, which designated this 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. So the Department of Veterans Affairs actually said, hey, we want to make it more user-friendly for veterans to access the crisis line, because they understand, like, during a moment of crisis, every second counts. And the newer, shorter number, they hope, makes it easier for veterans and those that care about veterans to be able to reach some support should they need it without having to be enrolled in any VA benefits or healthcare. So the previous number, which still exists, by the way, is 1-800-273-8255, and then you press 1. But now it's 988 and press 1. Both numbers still work, but the 988 is quicker. And this year the VA has made a couple of announcements that reducing veteran suicide is a top priority for the VA, and I'm one to support that because anyone that we can help, we should be able to help. So this 988 crisis line is a national network, and the VA collaborated with the Veterans Crisis Line and 988 Lifeline in order to just accomplish a successful transition so there wasn't any hiccups. They've been working on it for about 2 years that I read. They've added a ton of crisis line employees and responder staff. By last count I saw in the article, which I'll link in the show notes, it was hundreds. And there's still some more hiring going underway. Future episodes, I'm going to take a look and see if I can find the job postings for that, and I'll link them down there if anybody's interested in applying. And they've also gone and strengthened call center infrastructure. I know that's a big thing. I mean, when you have something like this, you got to have the infrastructure to support it. Just creating a new line, if you don't have the personnel power to back it up and the technical power to back it up, isn't going to make much difference. In fact, it could bog it down and make it more difficult for the people that actually need it. So this Veterans Crisis Line, it's basically just a critical component of this larger integrated suicide prevention network. As of right now, it links more than 500 suicide prevention coordinators across the VA healthcare system, and also helps ensure that you get some follow-on services as a full continuity of care. And a lot of this stuff is coming from the VA article, which I'll link. So there's some stats they offer in there. Individuals who call the Veterans Crisis Line are 5 more times likely to have less distress, and less suicidal ideation from the beginning to the end of the call. I just know that calling's a good thing, and having an idea of what number to call should you need help yourself or should you want to help someone in your family is important. And I think it's important that the VA streamlined this a little bit, took advantage of a larger infrastructure that was already there to help benefit veterans and veterans' families that might need this help. So once again, you just dial 988 and then press 1. That's the new option. And the original number, 1-800-273-8255, and then press 1, remains available. And veterans can continue to reach out via chat at www.veteranscrisisline.net. And then there's a gethelpnow.chat. And all that'll be linked in the show notes. And it'll always be linked in the admin notes at the bottom of the show notes for every episode. So make sure you check that out. And hopefully no one needs it, but it's there if you do. So now onto the watch-related topic, and I know that this is going to, trust me, this pales in comparison to the previous topic we just discussed. But I had kind of like a watch collecting epiphany, and it made me reevaluate, or actually, I think evaluate for the first time, my whole watch collecting strategy, if that's even the right term. I don't know if you have a strategy for fun. I mean, I guess you would, but more on that in a second. But just bear with me on this one. So the other day I sat down and actually insured some watches, and I had a thought pop up in my head. And I don't have a super large collection. Like, I know some people that have 26 of a certain type of watch, like a specific model or variations of it. I know people that have over 100 watches. I think I have about 12, if I'm accurately counting, probably less because I've sold some off. But when I was insuring certain pieces, the thought popped up that, do I really need the timepieces that I don't feel the need to insure? And is that the right line of thought? Like, are these pieces not as important to my collection? Do I not enjoy them as much because they're not as expensive as the other pieces? And I did some quick critical thinking. You know what I mean? Like, I know some of the more affordable pieces don't have quite the technology inside as far as the movements go. Some of them don't have as much provenance. Some do. Some are in other categories, which I'll touch on in a second. But what I really thought was, do I need to stop nickel and diming myself with regard to collecting? And have I been nickel and diming myself? I mean, I had so many thoughts going on. And then I watched a video from Pete over at Not So Obvious Watches YouTube channel, and I'll link that in the show notes. And he asked a question that kind of melted my brain. And his question was, and it's part of a larger video, but the one question he talked about, that he said was, how many watches do you have in your core collecting zone? And I sat there for probably like 30 seconds like, oh man, that's a great question. But do I even have a core collecting zone? Like, what is my core collecting zone? And a lot of these questions really immediately pushed me towards some of the earliest pieces I collected, stuff I got right when I started collecting. And I really started to think about it. Like, I think I picked up some of these pieces because I like them, quote unquote, or because I thought I needed to have these pieces in my collection in order to be considered a collector. And that was a very real thing for me early on. And that question from Pete kind of brought me back to that. Now, over the course of like 3 years, just in this last year alone, I've moved some stuff, right? I used to own a relatively a ton of samurais, all of them generation two, but I had the blue whale, I had the SRPB 53, but I had a modified one with a steel bezel. I had the great white, I have the SRPB 09, the blue lagoon, and I had a manta ray. And I think I'm leaving one out. I think the blue whale, the 93. Yeah. So I had done a whole video collaboration that I helped out a little bit with Adrian over at Somewhere in Time Watch Reviews about samurais. And it was really cool to have all these samurais. But then at one point I was like, what am I doing with all these samurais? Especially when I had the SRPB 09, the Blue Lagoon. I mean, that one's a legit limited edition. They only made, I think it was 6,000 of them, which is still kind of a high number, but 6,000 of them. And everything else, I had a couple of limited editions sorry, special editions. But, the grand scheme of things, the SRPB 09 is really the chef's kiss. And so over the course of the year, I know some fellow veterans that either do some EDC stuff, or they do some art stuff, or they just do some nautical stuff online on Instagram or YouTube. And I noticed a lot of these people didn't have timepieces. And so I hit them up and said, hey, let me get your mailing address. And I gifted, I think, four timepieces total. I won a Accutron from the Spring Bar podcast raffle. And I gifted that to a veteran I know that does some painting and stuff, because I felt like it fit his whole aesthetic. But my whole point is, I gave these watches away, and in doing so, I sat and thought about that too. Like, these are nice timepieces. They're really good timepieces. But did I need 5 of them? Did I need 5 of the same one? I mean, what am I, a samurai collector? No. I had to stop and really, I didn't even realize I was thinking about it before, but I was really thinking about what it was at the time about the samurai that really attracted to me to it. Seiko has beautiful dials on those, but the samurai case, the aesthetic is just really industrial, angular, sharp. Some of the cases are brushed, some of them aren't. But I've always talked about how it kind of looked like a ship, like a warship. And then, anyways, I'm rambling on. But my point was, I gave these away to fellow veterans because I felt like they deserved to have them. Everyone should have a nice timepiece. But I also felt like, if I was being honest about it, I either had redundancy in my collection, or I had some pieces that were similar and I just simply liked them. Because when I lined them all up, I thought to myself afterwards, I mean, I didn't really need them. And compared to this one that I loved, these are other ones that I liked. And I don't think like is enough to collect, if that makes any sense. So I moved them on to people I felt that needed them and enjoyed them and appreciated them and are having a good time. I even have a Seiko mod that I did that with. And honestly, I don't miss them. I don't miss them. I see other people using them. It makes me happy. But that kind of wraps up where this question from Pete at Not So Obvious Watches got me to. It's simple. All in all, the moment of insuring them in Pete's video made me, I'm stopping all watch purchases for a while. And I'm really going to sit down and think about what I'm doing with my collection. Like, where am I going? What am I doing? What do I want my collection to say about me? Like, does my collection even fit on my lifestyle? And I'll give you some examples. My buddy Tease, is a little bit younger than me, really active lifestyle, and mine's pretty active, but I'm talking like, paddleboarding, surfing, all that stuff, really active. And I've had a ton of surgeries on my legs, like, full disclosure. I'm still in halfway decent shape for my age, but I can't do the things I really, really used to do. Like most veterans, I would say, there's a lot of us out there, it could be shoulders, it could be whatever. For some of us, it's like me, it's a lot of stuff, but I still exercise the best I can. I still try to eat healthy and I do all this stuff, but I'm not out like paddleboarding or jumping out of a plane or scuba diving or surfing or stuff that I, even like playing lots of sports like I used to when I was younger. All stuff I would have loved to done. But now I'm kind of like, I get up, I go to work, I exercise, I research stuff for the podcast, do stuff for the blog, I collaborate. But I'm not out like, you know, my IG feed, you can look at it. It's pretty much just cool pictures of watches, maybe not always just doing cool stuff. So I want to kind of take a moment and take some time to stop and think and say, how can I make my collection fit my lifestyle and be representative of such? And I think that's what I'm going to take a little bit of time to do. And I thank Pete for asking that question, and I got some feedback. I'm part of the Casual Watch Talk Discord group, and I got a lot of feedback from the people in there. And I say thank you to all of them. And it's just kind of like it was a mind blown moment. Like what am I doing? And I never realized it because I look at so many other people's. Now I know that social media can be what you want it to be, but I feel like there's quite a few people that are pretty honest in their IG feeds, and the pictures you see of them in their watches or what they're doing with their watches. You can tell the difference between someone's at a festival or at a meal vice with someone who's posing with a car that's probably not theirs because it's parked on the side of the street kind of thing. You know what I mean? And even then, have fun, do what you got to do. But I'm just going to take some time to think about my collection, think about where I want to go, and really research some pieces that I can go handle and figure out if it's something I really want to save for and strive for and get. I feel like the Pelagos is still on that conversation because I did actually get to go handle it. And even though it was the blue and white one, I mean, I thought it was excellent. I mean, between you and me. So yeah, I'm still pining for the HG, but I want to go try that specific one on if I can and see what it looks like, colors and all that stuff like that. But that's where I'm at. I welcome any comments, any feedback in the comments. I open those up. I'm going to do a short follow-up article on the blog about this with this specific topic. So I'll leave those comments open too. If anyone's got any feedback, I'd love to hear them. And that's just where I'm at. So the closing thoughts today, episode 15, 1-5. I mean, who would have thought? I'm almost a quarter of the way to my goal for the year of putting out episodes, and I'm pretty happy about that. I recently got my new technology, not all of it, but a good amount of it. So this week I'm going to spend it setting up my new computer, getting everything running right, making sure the audio is still good and all that stuff, and set myself up a proper little workstation. So when I'm doing my one-man show here, I'm able to, create the script for the podcast. I'm able then to, also at the same time create the show notes. And then I'm able to put that admin stuff on the website and on the podcast show notes at the same time. I'm trying to streamline the process. I'm hoping that allows me to do some more time for research and stuff and be able to give you slightly more in depth. And the goal at the end of the year is going to be eventually transition this to a video format. I've been working on some storyboards and stuff, and I got some ideas. So I think it would be cool because I think a lot of this stuff I can show for the veteran stuff, particularly, it would be nice to be able to show a screen and how to maneuver through the website or whatever resource I'm showing you. So stand by for that. And also, again, don't forget the live streams Tuesday evenings at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Sundays at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over on the Casual Watch Talk YouTube channel. Sam's a great guy. I tell you to go look at his stuff. His channel's great. He's pretty, like I said, even keeled, and he's a wonderful host to work with. Today's positive affirmation is this: never settle for less, not with others, and especially not in yourself. If you know you're capable of doing more, then do more. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to do more right then at that moment, but do more. And don't settle for less from others. I mean, I've learned this in the hobby going through it. There are definitely people in this hobby who give equally to what you put out. And it's not about what you receive, but when it comes to effort, I'm a full believer in that the effort should always be matched 50-50. Are there at times where you're given 80 and the other person's given 20? Yeah. I mean, maybe you have more work to do on a project, but then it should always come back to the middle ground. There should be an even cooperation. And if you're not getting that in a relationship, then you're settling. You're settling for doing more for the person who's doing less. And that's not fair to you because you deserve more than that. So never settle for less, not with others, and especially not in yourself. And remember, at watchrolling.com, you make the watch. The watch doesn't make you.